Today, I'm going to show you 5 techniques for breathing life into your drums when you're working on 4 on the floor dance music. I'll show you techniques for the Launchpad Pro sequencer that can take a beat from this to something like this. We're going to look at using swing, velocity, different pattern lengths, and a few other tricks to really bring life to your drums and give your track energy and dynamics. Let's go. Okay, so firstly, let's look at swing and how that can add groove to your beats. When you're using a sequencer to make house music or any other kind of 4 on the floor dance music, it's really easy to get locked into a very metronomic, non-grooving rhythm, and swing is one way to get away from that. So here in Live, I've got 4 tracks with a bunch of samples loaded up. Those are connected to the 4 sequencer tracks on the Launchpad. So the first thing we want to do is find a tempo. Let's hit shift, we're at 120. Most of the samples I've been working with here are at about 124, so let's set ourselves to that. Okay, and we'll go back into the sequencer. I've got a range of different drum sounds here. We're just going to start with a simple kick and hi-hat. So the obvious thing that you might want to do there is put the kick on the 1 and the 3, and then put a hi-hat on the upbeat. Let's play that down. So that works, but it's very repetitive and it doesn't really have a feel to it because it's completely on the grid. So what I'm going to do is go into the swing area of the sequencer. At the moment it's set to 50, which means that all the notes are evenly spaced. As I turn this up, what it does is it offsets that every other beat is a bit later. So it's like sort of delaying the second offbeat of every hit that you play. And it's a really important part of drum grooves, especially in jazz and stuff like that. And a lot of breakbeats and sampled material that gets used in dance music has that feel kind of baked into it. So let's go back to our sequencer and hit play. And you'll notice it doesn't sound any different. That's because the swing affects the offbeats, these ones. So what I'm going to do is take that hi-hat and I'm going to put just a little offbeat at the end here. What I might even do is, just to make it obvious, is do that across a few of those steps there, and we'll turn the velocity on those down a bit as well. And now let's roll it down. So you'll hear that little hi-hat flourish is sort of grooving against the metronomic sound. If we go back and turn that down to 50 and play the pattern, it's a really straight rhythm. And as I turn the swing up, it really starts to shuffle. It's a bit too much. I'm going to go, yeah, about there's pretty good. So what that's done has meant that anything that I add on the offbeats as a little accent now adds a groove to the pattern. I actually quite like to just have that not very often in a pattern like this. And just at the end, and it just gives the whole turnaround a bit of a feel to it. So that's given us a bass groove to start from, and now we can start adding stuff over the top. Okay, so I've got a basic groove going and it's got some nice swing happening, and now I want to add a bit of variation to the drums. So one way to add drum variation, and a really common thing to do in dance music, is to filter things. So high pass or low pass filter stuff and bring it in and out. When you're writing, starting to work with automation can get quite complicated. So what I like to do in the writing phase is just have different drum sounds with different settings on them. So the beat that I've got going sounds like this. Now if we look at the kick drum there, you'll see that it's got a high pass filter on it, and that's taking out some of the low end. So that kick drum hits, but it doesn't have a lot of bass in it. Up here I've got a couple of other sounds that are much deeper. So the cool thing about layering drum kits is that you can add different sounds into the beat without having to stop and change stuff in the computer. You can just choose different notes in the sequencer and add variation. I've got a second drum kit over here which has electronic sounds in it. So let's go through and add some variation to the beat. So here I've got some different hi-hats, and that's going to allow me to vary up the hi-hat rhythm a little bit, and they just sound different to the other drums. So that little change in sound didn't require me to go into the computer or the sampler or change anything. I can just add a different sequence and add a different sound to the beat. So by working with different samples there, I've been really easily able to add dynamic and change to the drum beat just by sequencing different notes. I don't have one kick, I've got quite a few different ones. And by layering them in different places, so the thin one goes on the 1 and the 3, this one here goes on the 1, and then it doesn't repeat evenly throughout the pattern. And then for the snares, I've got a few options as well. So I've got a thin one, I've got a cross stick, I've got a more deep snare, and I'm using this electronic one as well. Just by varying the number of drum sounds you've got and layering them up like that, it makes it really fast to write and bring sonic change to the patterns, but you don't have to spend a lot of time sound designing in the computer or sampler to do that. So because 4 on the floor music often has a really repetitive backbeat, if you do everything at the same velocity, it can start to sound very stiff. There's no sort of ebb and flow in the energy of the drums. I've got this beat going at the moment like this. And it's got a bit of variety and some layered drum sounds, but there's not much going on with the velocity, especially with the hi-hats. So I'm going to go into the projects page. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to save that into a new slot. We'll go back into the sequencer, and I'm actually just going to clear that pattern with the main drums, and that'll just leave us with the bass line. I'll clear that secondary drum pattern as well. So let's leave the bass line in place, but we're going to work on a drum sequence on the first track. So what we want to work with is the hi-hat. If I just put those in, let's look at the pattern settings and just repeat this first little section to start with. As you can hear, that's really repetitive and stiff, and this is where velocity can make a huge difference. So I want the on-beat ones to be very quiet, and then I want this one here to be a little less loud, and this one is going to be kind of full velocity, I think. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So we'll do the same thing throughout the pattern. We're just going to add the hi-hat in on all the beats like that, and we're going to go through and somewhat not randomize the velocity, but we will vary it a little bit so that each hit is not exactly the same. I want these ones here, actually no, sorry, I want these ones here to be really low velocity. They're kind of like little accents more than actual parts of the pattern. And then these ones I'm going to turn up a bit. And what we'll do is we'll make it so that every second row of this offbeat or hi-hat is quite loud. And these ones we'll leave a little bit quieter so that there's, even between the repeating steps of the pattern, there's going to be a change in velocity. Let's roll that. So that brings some variety to the hi-hats. Let's do the same thing with the kick drum. So if I just put it in at full velocity like that. This one as well. Very on beat. So let's take the starts of a couple of the phrases and turn those down. I think we might also turn these ones here down a bit. So now you can hear that pattern pushes and pulls. It goes hard on the one, and this one are quieter, and then this one here emphasizes with an accent as well. It's in exactly the same place, it's following the same pattern, but it moves the accent of the rhythm around.
And then it calls back a time. And then it calls back a time when there were flowers all over the earth.
Okay, so next up we're going to look at how to make a 4 on the floor beat breathe over time. So we've got this beat going like this. And you can see that it just repeats over and over. What I'm going to do is, we've got this kick drum here happening quite a few times throughout. I'm going to just leave it on the 1 like that. So that makes it into a 4-bar pattern because that heavy kick only happens at the start. Just that additional accent brings some life to it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the pattern mode of the sequencer. At the moment I'm using pattern 1 here for all 4 tracks. I've got some bass here, that melodic sample. This one's not being used yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then pattern 1 is that main beat we're listening to. So I'm going to hold down the scene button and you'll see that it's triggering all 4 of those patterns. Let's do the same for the next scene and we'll see that they're all the same thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to duplicate the 2 drum patterns across like that. So they'll be the same thing. And we're going to make the 4th one here trigger those second patterns. So let's mess with that drum beat a little bit and add some variation here. And maybe we could do something like that. Add some offbeat hi-hats. I'm going to go to the second track where I've got some other sort of electronic-y sounds. So put that one there. We'll go back into patterns mode. I'm going to make it so that it plays the second pattern on the melodic samples as well. I like that one, so let's put that on the front. So this is where using the sequencer and scene chaining works really well. So I'm going to hold those buttons down like that. Now when I play, it's going to play the first pattern 3 times, and at the end it's going to play that turnaround. Let's have a listen. It's just like building a turnaround in a song if you're playing an instrument where you do something the same for a long time, and then at the end you just take it somewhere else for a little bit so that it comes back around and feels like a change in the music. Okay, in this part I'm going to show you how to take stuff away to make bigger changes in your song. So earlier we looked at ways to extend the length of phrases and patterns and to add drum fills and changes to make simple musical sequence into longer phrases. In this part we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it in a subtractive way, which sounds counterintuitive, but often leaving a bit of space rather than adding a drum fill is a really good way to let the energy kick back in at the start of the next phrase. So let's play this down. So here I've got the same pattern playing 3 times, and then this one, let's listen to it, as a fill at the end. So that builds in energy. The opposite version of doing that is to take stuff out. So let's actually just go in and completely clear those 2 patterns there. We'll go back to track 1. So what we might just do is put a really simplified version of our drum groove in, and we're just going to stop it. I'm actually going to move, I think I'll put it up here like that. So only the first 2 bars are going to play, and then it's going to leave the last part empty. What we'll do is go into this little track here which has, so I might just put that on the 1 and see what that sounds like. I think that might sound better if we put it there. So let's try that. Okay, so on its own, that little 4-bar turnaround is kind of too repetitive. So we'll go back into pattern mode, we'll sequence it together like that and listen for that change. So it seems counterintuitive that taking stuff away adds energy, but because we've emptied out the end of that phrase, it lets the bass and the melodic sample ring out. Then when the patterns start again, it just really feels like the energy's kicking back in.
Back in time.
I hope that's useful for you in working on your own sequences and thinking about ways to extend your patterns, how to bring life to them with swing and velocity, and using fills and series of patterns to make an arrangement of a song that ebbs and flows in an energetic way. Cheers.
And then it calls back a time when there were flowers all over the earth.